to make political points, but you don't do it on the backs of innocent people who were killed in a rampage. But that's exactly what has happened this week. Yesterday, a memorial service was held in California for 6 Americans murdered by Elliot Rodger last Friday. Obviously a heartbreaking situation. These young people did nothing to Mr. Rodger, the crazed killer. In addition to the dead, he hurt 13 other people. As Talking Points has stated, there is no way to stop mass murder. No way. Even in countries like Norway, which is very peaceful and has little gun intrusion, a psycho murdered 77 human beings a few years ago. If somebody wants to kill, they'll find a way. But for some reason, crazy ideologues feel they need to exploit these situations. We begin with this woman, Brittany Cooper, who teaches gender and Africana studies at Rutgers University in New Jersey. Ms. Cooper is a far-left loon, writing articles that associate Duck Dynasty with racism, that kind of thing. On the net, Cooper writes, quote, "How many times must troubled young white men engage in these terroristic acts that make public space unsafe for everyone before we admit that white male privilege kills," unquote. White male privilege kills? That's just insane. These murders had nothing to do with white privilege. It was some young guy unhinged. He actually killed himself. Is that white privilege too? Ms. Cooper conveniently overlooks that murder is colorblind. In Chicago, thousands of people, thousands, have been murdered in the public space over the last few years. And 70% of the killers are black. 70%, Ms. Cooper. So you, madam, are exploiting the Santa Barbara atrocity. And trying to ramp up racial hatred to boot. And Rutgers puts that person in the classroom. And then there's Mark Potok from the Southern Poverty Law Center. He blames the killing on internet sites where frustrated men vent about women.
There is a whole world known as the manosphere of these sites. There are scores and scores of the sites, if not hundreds of them. And the thing that is most prevalent, the thing that's most noticeable about them, is their often really extreme misogyny. But this is a world that, in fact, has produced a number of mass killers.
Misogyny being hatred of women. So, an internet site provokes Rodger into going berserk. We expect more from Mr. Potok than that. The harsh truth is, we're living in a world where more and more people are becoming mentally ill. The reason for that, is alienation. Families falling apart, pervasive technology that numbs human feelings, and a culture that too often celebrates violence. Boundaries are broken down, but it has nothing to do with racism or bias against women. It has to do with individuals who are so sick they want to destroy other people as well as themselves. Sometimes those people can be helped, sometimes they can't be. Again, no matter what society does, there will always be mass murder. Always. And that's the memo. Now for the top story tonight, reaction joining us from Washington, Mary Catherine Ham and Juan Williams, both of Fox News analysts. So white privilege caused Rodger to murder? You buying that, Juan?
No, I think that's ridiculous. I'm glad you called her out, but I'm going to call you out tonight, Bill, because I know you as a guy who will object to Beyonce and her get in the back of the car sexual lyrics for young girls. I know you a guy who said to girls, I know you a guy who said to me, you know, these kids who get lost in these video game fantasies, that's damaging to their minds and to their values. And so we live, Bill, today in a pornographic culture, in Hollywood, in the music, and for us to close our eyes and say, oh, you can't call it out, that's not what caused this, I think that's like walking around with blinders on, pretending there's not a real danger in a very much a distorted and dysfunctional culture.
All right. Now, let me reply to that, because you're raising a very, not complicated point, but an intricate point. These two people, Potok and this Rutgers professor, they're saying cause and effect. Cause and effect. White privilege caused that murder. That's insane, okay? Any Everybody knows that's crazy. All right, an internet site where men complain about women caused this guy to kill these people. That's wrong. It's exploitative. The point that I am making and that you pointed out is that the culture of entertainment does affect people. It numbs them.
Yes,
but
yes.
It doesn't cause murder or pregnancy. It doesn't directly cause it. All right? That's cause and effect. What it does do is it makes the society more cruder. All right? And it desensitizes human beings. But it doesn't cause them. Or one, we have 320 million people. We'd peel off 1 million and they'd be running around killing everybody. Come on.
Yeah, but my point, go ahead, Mary Catherine.
Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing: is I think you can have a discussion about culture and coarsening of culture and how that affects people without jumping on a political hobby horse that you are always talking about already as soon as a tragedy happens. And I think that's something, not to say that not everybody does it, but that the left is particularly interested in and particularly good at doing. And I think it's oversimplified, and I think some of it when it's not cynicalified, and I think some of it when it's not cynical, and most of it is cynical. Some of it is because people want an easy answer to these kinds of tragedies, and you're pointing out, and I think rightly and depressingly, Bill, that maybe there isn't a simple answer.
There is no answer in a free society.
But here's the other thing,
even in a fascist society, you're going to have it. Go ahead.
Here's the other thing about these kinds of incidents is when it does not fit the template of something the left would like to complain about, such as guns or misogyny or video games. And I'm not discounting the fact that this had a virulent misogynist streak in it at all. I'm not discounting that. But what they do is when it doesn't fit a narrative, Christopher Dorner in California and that manhunt, female killers such as this Craigslist killer, for instance, who's admitted to serial killing apparently, and other things along those lines, the Discovery Channel guy who had some environmentalist views, they sort of just shut that out of the discussion of these murders because it doesn't confirm what they want.
The analogy that I made about the Chicago rampage.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Right. I mean, this nutty professor in New Jersey totally discounting the carnage going on for years, committed primarily by young black men. But that doesn't count because she wants to hammer white people.
Well, yeah, I think it's not a discussion that she's as comfortable having.
No,
Juan, would you
let's
agree?
be honest. Let's be honest.
Agree, Juan,
what the people who are getting killed are young black people by other young black people. And so she's totally out of it, and we can beat her up all night. I don't want to do that. But I will say this, that Mary Catherine's talking about the left and says, oh, the left is going to use this conveniently when the narrative fits. What is it about the right that the right refuses to hear when the dad of one of the dead children out there says, I don't want to hear from politicians. I don't need any apologies or condolences. Why don't we do something about guns in this country?
Because
Why don't we do something?
He has the right to speak about it, but then it's...
I'll give you the last word, Mary Catherine. Look, the gun thing is a canard, Juan.
Oh, come on.
No, you could ban guns just like Norway has, and you're going to have 77 people dead at one time or another. 77 people dead at one time or another. Mary Catherine gets the last word.
We have constant... We can't even protect our children in this country.
I got the last word, Juan. I got the last word. When it comes down to these big mass murders and indiscriminate killings, the thread that is most common seems to be mental illness. That's tougher to talk about, and that runs up against freedom when you're talking about being able to take people into custody. It's a tough problem. It's not easy to solve, and getting on your political hobby horse, whatever it is, doesn't help the problem. All
right. Good debate, you guys. Thank you. Next on the Rundown, we'll update you on that Marine being held in Mexico and ask a question, why does this kind of stuff continue to happen? Then later.